Winter had passed, and buds were beginning to form on the trees while flowers bloomed across the fields as spring began in earnest. And as for me, you did well keeping up with your body exercises, Leon. Now it's time you finally put it to good use. I was starting my swordsmanship class with my father, Paul. Well, class would probably be a bit too much praise, but I'd hold off any judgment until after. You know, originally, I thought we would only be doing exercises for another year or so, but you sure proved me wrong, Paul said with a troubled smile. Well, of course, no normal 3-year-old would be able to hold a sword at this point, even with the exercises. But you see, I had healing magic. At first, I was hesitant about using magic to enhance my physical training. After all, if healing magic simply sped up cell recovery, then not only would I be messing up my natural development, but I would also be at risk of growing older too fast. But healing magic, as it turned out, was pretty magical. It simply did whatever it needed to heal the target, even if it meant bypassing natural biological processes. For example, with some advanced skill, someone being healed wouldn't feel tired after it, when in theory, the healing magic should only be speeding up the natural process, which expends a large amount of energy for the target. This would also explain why there was no record of people who used healing magic constantly dying earlier due to cancer or anything like that. So basically, I knew I was safe to use it on myself, allowing me to expedite the process of growing my muscles to the point where I could now hold a wooden sword with no problem. The toughest part of healing, though, was having to heal every spot through my hands. I wonder if I could apply healing magic over my entire body. I would have to experiment with that later. Ahem. Anyway, I'll teach you all that I know in the 3 sword styles, though I wouldn't exactly call the North God a style, Paul grumbled before tossing me a wooden sword. It was a bit big, but I would grow into it as I got older. Where to start? So for the sword god, it's all about getting there faster. Like, swoosh, and, kapow. Was he being serious? And water god, it's all about countering. So when the opponent goes, whoosh, you, thwoom, and, shink, he continued, swinging his sword with practiced ease. Oh my god, he was being serious. This guy was supposed to be my teacher. I had a feeling it would be a while before I got the hang of swordsmanship. I knew he was an idiot, but I thought that when it came to swordsmanship, it would be a little different considering his skill. I guess that while he was still a genius at the sword, he was an idiotic genius who only knew how to swing a sword out of instinct rather than intelligence. It's hard to explain it. No, I think that's just you. Here, just watch. He then strutted over to the boulder in the yard before raising his sword overhead. Taking a step forward, he then brought down his blade, causing a faint whistle to echo across the yard as a flash of silver streaked down the boulder. His sword pointing downward, I watched as the boulder separated into 2 halves, a clean cut running through the center. Truly ridiculous. Physically, Paul was quite a fit and strong man, but he wasn't strong enough to cut a boulder in half like that. Unless, do sword techniques hold a special property to them? Something like magic or mana, that would make sense. Chantless magic exists, after all, and even if not everyone could use magic, it was known that every person had mana in their bodies. Could they be using mana unconsciously to enhance their prowess? Some sort of enhancement magic that is separate from the known schools. Well, this idiot surely wouldn't know, so I guess those thoughts could come later. For now. But you can't do that yet. Hey, who knows? Maybe you'll never be able to do that. But for now, let's get you swinging a sword properly, he said. While his words were annoying, they were right. Just like with my magic practice, advanced theories and specialized skills could come later. For now, I just needed to master the basics, and then build up from there. Information on the 6-faced world. Sword styles. There are 3 main schools of swordsmanship that are common in the world. Only those who have studied one of these 3 styles are called swordsmen. For other schools, even if they use a sword, they are called warriors instead. The 3 major schools are Sword God style. The basic philosophy of the Sword God style is to attack first and fast, killing your opponent before they can harm you. This leads to the style having a focus on attacking techniques while having a limited number of countering and defensive ones. Practitioners are often short-tempered and belligerent as a result of their philosophy, and practitioners are encouraged to wear light clothing to react swiftly and properly use their techniques. Water God style. This style specializes in defensive techniques, emphasizing parrying and counter-attacking oncoming attacks. A skilled practitioner is also able to read the flow of mana and use their senses to block or counter any attack. Practitioners often wear heavy armor, as they do not need to move great distances for their techniques. This style of swordsmanship is the most common among knights and nobles, as their job is to protect someone or themselves rather than focus on attacking. North God style. The main focus of this style is not techniques or specialties, but rather an approach to battle, one specializing in practicality and surviving the battle. This style involves tricks and tactics rather than using refined techniques. The most varied of the three styles, practitioners can come in many shapes and sizes, with some dual wielding, and others using non-sword weapons such as battle axes. Many adventurers and mercenaries learn this style for its versatility and effectiveness in unpredictable situations. Rudeus Greyrat. It had been a few months since stepping into the world of swordsmanship, and luckily, I was able to quickly learn the basics, such as setting my stance correctly and swinging the most basic of sword strikes with the proper form. While Paul was a horrible teacher, he at least knew when I was doing something wrong. The only problem with that was, no, not like, wish. Like, swoosh. Memory, Paul said with his stupid face. Yeah, he explained it horribly, at least he could do it well. So, by using him as a reference, and his corrections as my guide, I was soon able to work out any kinks in my form, and could then begin training in earnest, embedding the techniques into my muscle memory so that I could use them without a thought. My sword didn't whistle as I swung, nor did the air tremble, and I definitely couldn't cut any boulders, but that was okay. That would all come with time. So for now, I would continue mastering the basics with this idiotic father of mine. As we trained, Paul also slowly revealed more to me about the three major schools of swordsmanship, and I learned that the three styles boiled down to a couple of traits between them. The sword god style that specialized in attacking and speed, the water god style that specialized in defense and countering, and the north god style that specialized in unpredictability and adaptability. Learning this, I also came to a new appreciation for my swordsmanship instructor, as by utilizing the three styles as seamlessly as he did, he was able to cover the weaknesses of each style and form something stronger between the three. A shame, if he was just a little more motivated or a bit smarter, he could have probably become a renowned genius. But Paul was Paul, after all. Still, seeing his unique swordsmanship, a new desire began to sprout within me. The three styles, along with my chantless magic, couldn't I make a new style of my own? A magic sword style, or something. Well, only time would tell, but for now, I felt content slowly honing my blade the traditional way before I started on my own path. But my swordsmanship wasn't the only thing that had improved over these months. Opening my eyes, I watched as the various droplets of water that orbited around me began to coalesce into a singular ball before finally dropping into the cup I laid out in front of me. Slow and steady, I said, wiping the beads of sweat off my forehead. Being able to control magic so fluidly like I had just done did not happen overnight. Rather, it was through a series of breakthroughs in the realm of magic. First, I pondered about what exactly incantations did. I still didn't know for sure, but I hypothesized that they momentarily inscribe a magic circle on the body or something of the sort. But that only led to more questions about what magic circles were, and that would be getting too deep into semantics. The main thing I learned was that mana coming from one's own body was theirs to control. I was still confused about how exactly elements came into being, but I knew that it rested on the imagination of the user, or in the case of incantations, something else. Okay, maybe I didn't make too many breakthroughs after all, but the point was that using magic freely was possible. I just had to slowly break down the aspects of the standard process and make it my own. First, I found out about the 4 parts in the process of spell actualization, them being spell creation, shape alteration, size adjustment, and then velocity. You could also add other extra properties before releasing the spell, such as homing in on a target or having it explode on impact, but that was beside the point. Next, I worked on my control over each of these parts. Interestingly, I also discovered that the more you altered a spell from its original state, the more mana you used up. For instance, with size adjustment, making a water ball 2 times larger expended 2 times the mana, which made sense, but what didn't, was the fact that making it 2 times smaller also expended 2 times the mana. Yes, very weird. Energy to mass conversion simply didn't work like that. But that was just another reason to escape the confines of rigid spell creation, I suppose. Anyway, after getting the fundamentals of the 4 main parts down, I then practiced altering the spell after it was created, such as changing a water ball into a water arrow after already casting it as a water ball. This led me to now, where I could take complete control of each of the 4 elements, though I still followed the regular process for summoning it. While this was a great control exercise, due to me changing the nature of the magic so much, it also allowed me to drain my mana reserves at a very efficient rate. The power was lacking, and I needed to be in a state of meditation to do anything meaningful, so it wasn't useful at all in combat, but progress was progress. Hopefully, after increasing my control a bit more, I could also work on casting magic from parts of my body other than my hand. With earth magic, for instance, where many spells required casting through contact with the ground, being able to cast through my feet would be extremely useful. Now that I think about it, I should start working on that right now. But I couldn't exactly do that inside. Leon, I'm back, Paul shouted from downstairs. Go grab your sword and get out here. Never mind, I guess it was time for sword training once again. Rudeus Greyrat. It had been a little over a year since I came to terms with my reincarnation, and in this time, I had discovered another astonishing fact about my situation. Not only was I reborn, but I was reborn in another world. A fantasy world of swords and magic. I remember that morning quite clearly. I was watching as my father, who I had learned was named Paul, took my brother, Leon, outside after winter had ended before promptly making him swing his sword repeatedly until he collapsed from exhaustion. I was initially distraught. While I was quite put off by my brother due to bad memories, he was a good kid. A mama's boy through and through who always made sure to help around the house and tried to keep me happy. So I had no ill will toward this new brother of mine, rather, I felt quite endeared to the kid. So seeing my father tire him so much with sword training, it truly made me sick to my stomach. Wasn't that child abuse? And more importantly, would I be forced to do such a dweeb-like thing as swinging a sword around once I got older? In my fright, I fell from the bench I had been sitting on, right onto my head. My mother, Zenith, was rightfully panicked, and quickly picked me up before chanting some soothing lullaby. But as I quickly found out, it wasn't a lullaby at all. Rather, it was a spell. A healing magic spell. Magic, a world of magic. After that discovery, I began listening in on their conversations a bit more, and I quickly picked up the names of places that I had never heard of before. And then, a week later, my brother summoned a ball of water in front of me out of thin air before twirling it around in an attempt to entertain me, banishing all doubts. This wasn't a normal reincarnation, but rather, it was a reincarnation in another world. With the knowledge and experience of my past life, I could get another chance to live life without the same mistakes my previous self had made. Finally, I could live life right. And, hopefully, pick up some cute girls along the way. Hee. Lilia. Watching as the young master swung his sword diligently, I felt my mouth blossom into a smile at the sight. Truly, just a few years ago, I would have never thought I would be where I am now and feel as happy as I currently was. I used to be a royal handmaiden for the Asura Palace harem, which, alongside the usual handmaiden duties, included acting as a guard. In my case, I was to guard the newborn princess. When it came to domestic duties, I carried out my job with absolute perfection, to the point where I was nearly nominated to serve the king himself if it wasn't for my commoner background. As for my combat capabilities, however, they were only adequate. Just what you would expect from an intermediate rank water god swordswoman. So it was only natural that when I was forced to defend the princess against a group of assassins, I had found myself completely outmatched. Despite this, I had carried out my duty to protect the princess diligently, and eventually, one of the other palace guards put an end to the would-be killer, but the attacker had struck me with a blade, one coated in poison potent enough to kill royalty. Luckily, the palace mages were able to save my life and my leg, but due to the troublesome nature of the poison, I was unable to continue my life as a fighter with the lingering pain. And as expected, I was promptly discarded from my position right after. I held no ill will towards their decision. Rather, I was grateful they did not simply erase me in secret, considering my position in the court and my non-existent political support as a commoner. Besides, the disgusting leers that the nobles had sent my way had been getting on my nerves, so in a way, it felt good to finally escape that palace of lust and perverseness. As the assassin's mastermind was yet to be found, and considering how people might be privy to wanting a former Asura palace handmaiden to their benefit, I quickly made haste out of the capital city of Ars, towards the rural Fitoa region. At first, I was hoping to gain a position with the local lord in the citadel of Roa, or perhaps teach swordsmanship to the city's civilians, but anyone out here in the agricultural lands that were willing to pay for my services would likely have connections back to the capital, and I wanted no part in that life anymore, so those options were thrown out. So, after a month of wandering the region with no prospects, I finally found a job posting that caught my eye. A housekeeper with the immediate duty of a midwife for some low-ranking knight in Buena Village. The salary was fine, if a little low for someone of my skills. But what particularly caught my eye was the name of said knight. One Paul Greyrat. To think him of all people would settle down with a family. I had a history with the man, so to say. Back when I was being trained by my father in swordsmanship, he joined my father's dojo and quickly cemented himself as a genius, reaching the advanced rank in the water god style in a little over a year. But just as quickly as he came, he left like a hurricane, right after forcing himself onto me and taking my virginity. At first, I was bitter, angry, hateful toward the scoundrel that stole my innocence. But after joining the Asura palace, I quickly realized that losing my first time to someone as young and handsome like him was a gift in this cruel world. And so, I accepted the job, and quickly made my way to join this young family. Upon my arrival, I was surprised to see that there was already a child there, a kid that the two adventurers had picked up on their travels. But seeing how the lady, Zenith, and the boy, Leon, interacted, it was hard to believe they were not bound by blood. No, perhaps they were bound by something stronger. At first, I was a little put off by the boy who could speak in complete sentences despite only being 1 year old, but after being told he was likely a Miko, I was able to look past it and see Leon for all that he was. A boy. A very cute, and absolutely wonderful boy, at that. He was charming, for sure, with a nice face, beautiful eyes, attractive hair, and an adorable smile. I was certain that he would grow up into someone who would win over any woman he wished, much like his adoptive father. But luckily, I don't think I had to worry about such womanizing traits, I hope. After all, despite his young age, he was a gentleman who always tried to help me out with chores. Truly, a blessed child. And a genius as well. And then, the second child was born. The birth itself was problem-free, but once the child was born, it did not cry. At first, I was worried it had been stillborn, with its expressionless face completely devoid of life, but soon enough, such worries were cast away by the oddly reassuring sound of burbling. Rudeus was the child's name, and much like his older brother, he did not make a fuss, nor did he cry, save for the gurgles he made whenever he required feeding or needed a diaper changed. I was confused, perhaps he was a Miko like Leon. Or maybe he took after his older brother's example in some way. I would have thought that he was physically frail, being such a quiet child, but once again my worries were for naught, as once he learned how to crawl, Rudeus made his way around the house with relative ease. Though, with all of his adventures, oddly enough, he never wandered outside. Perhaps some sort of instinctual fear had been implanted into the child. Anyway, Rudeus, he was always smiling. Not the cute or charming smile of a child that would normally give one the instinct to protect, like Leon's, but rather he wore a repulsive grin that reminded me of the lecherous smiles that various nobles and ministers sent my way in Ars. And then there was how he would always search for my Zenith's undergarments before wearing them on his head, and how he always buried his face in my bosom with a gleeful smile, that was also worrisome. And quite disgusting as well. The unsettling and perverse feeling he gave off in place of what should be innocent affection, it scared me to no end. Even Paul, the womanizing tyrant of a man, didn't give off such an aura. But recently, Rudeus' behavior had changed. Now, instead of his previous unpredictability, I always found him holed up in his older brother's room, flipping through books while muttering random sounds to himself. And while I still found him strange, I no longer felt the usual revulsion I did toward the boy. Although he did occasionally release a creepy laugh, it no longer sent a chill down my spine when he did so. Perhaps that previous period of unsettling nature was simply a phase, and in place of it, a new sense of earnestness had sprouted. So while it was odd to leave a toddler to their lonesome, I thought it best not to interfere, lest he revert to how he was before. Now, I could say this house was stable. And with young Master Leon beginning to learn swordsmanship, despite Paul's inadequacies at teaching, it seemed like this new year would be a period of growth. Perhaps, if Leon has any trouble picking up the water god style, I would give him some instruction myself. While I was out of practice, I was always skilled at knowing what to do. Rather, I lacked the physical ability to do any advanced techniques or movements. That was simply the limit of my mediocre talent. But for teaching, I should be more than enough, at least until the advanced rank. I'm back, Lilia, Leon said, entering through the front door. Yes, this boy would do great things. And with his good heart, I knew that I had nothing to worry about. As long as Paul didn't implant any bad thoughts into him. Lilia, he said, tilting his head cutely. Yes, Leon, would you like me to prepare you a bath? I said, smiling down at him. Nah, I can get the water in there at a good temperature myself, remember? Rather, I should be asking you that. Do you want me to run a bath for you? Inviting a woman for a bath with such a charming, innocent smile, indeed, that was quite dangerous, but knowing that he was saying such a thing to me with no ulterior motives and only kindness warmed my heart. I sincerely hope Paul would not influence this precious boy. Leon Greyrat, atta boy, put some more oomph into it. Dodging Paul's obvious thrust, I pressed my back foot against the ground before launching towards his open chest as I swung my sword from the side. Thwack! But before it could reach him, he twisted his blade just in time to parry me. Hee. Nice try, but it'll be a while before you can hit me, he mocked. But don't worry, even if you did get me, it's not like it would hurt much. Damn it, this guy really knew how to get under my skin. That must be due to the water god style's provocation techniques, or maybe it was just him and his normal annoying self. Leaping back, I raised my sword once again to defend against any strike he sent my way, but instead, Paul simply rested his sword against his shoulder while stroking his chin in thought. Know what? I think at this point, you can call yourself a beginner swordsman, he said with a grin. Really? I asked doubtfully. While my skills have definitely grown over these past months, I still have yet to hit the guy, after all. And I was worried he was just teasing me again. Yep. While you're still weak, that's just because you're a kid and because you're fighting me. With a real blade in your hand. Yeah, I could see you putting up a fight against a swordsman. Especially with your skill in parrying, he answered. As he said, while I didn't care for any particular style, I found the water god techniques a bit easier to learn as the art of parrying didn't need much strength to perform. Well, that's great then. Which style am I a beginner in? I asked. All three of them. I mean, there's not much of a difference between the three at the beginner rank, since you're just learning the basics. But now that you got them down, I can start showing you some cooler stuff. He exclaimed. Ignoring his childish antics, I looked down at my wooden sword in the hand, which was previously so smooth, that was now covered in calluses and blisters. It seems like the hours spent swinging my sword and training my body weren't for nothing. I'm glad. What? Are you worried about how worn out your hand is now? Don't worry, my son. That's just proof of your dedication. And besides, women really like that rough texture in bed, you know Tilda, he said, making a beckoning motion with his fingers. Gross. I hated that I knew what he was referring to, and I hated it even more that I could hear the moans of my mother every night, likely due to said actions. Damn this cursed knowledge of mine. My lips curled into a frown. I'm telling Mama you said dirty things. Huh, you wouldn't. This is something to keep between men, you know. Then you should keep it that way, and not tell it to innocent little boys like me. Just don't infect Rudy with your Paulness. I might have the mind to not follow your example, but he's young and impressionable. I've already caught him stealing panties from the laundry more than once, I said, shaking my head. That's my son, Paul said proudly. You're not helping, I murmured sadly. Turning away from his annoying smile, I took in the beautiful scenery. The rolling hills and fields were painted in a thin layer of snow, creating a serene view that stretched as far as I could see, sparkling under the effect of reflecting sunlight. Looking toward the village, I could see the various houses and cottages with roofs dusted in white, contrasting with the black plumes of chimney smoke from many of the abodes. The air was crisp and still, and the surroundings quiet, save for the odd chirping bird. It was so peaceful. And with my recent advancements in magic, the worst part of the winter, the cold, had all but been eliminated. It took a little while, but I was finally able to generate heat without causing a fire, primarily by imagining the molecules in the air vibrating a little faster. Thinking about that made me feel a little more motivated. I'm gonna practice my magic now, I said. Alright. Just don't use up all your mana, okay? I don't want to go draw water in the cold like this, Paul said with a shrug. Seriously. So lazy. But I'd rather him ask me than Mama, so. Fine. I promise. With Paul heading back inside, I made my way out of the yard and toward the hill next to our house. Since I was now learning intermediate spells, I didn't want to damage anything or hurt anyone with my practice, so I asked Mama if I was able to bring my studies outside. She accepted, of course, but only as long as I didn't harm the villagers and made sure to stay within sight of the window. And this hill was perfect for both requirements. Flicking my hand, I sent out a wave of fire to melt the snow around the top before stomping my foot, raising a small stool from the ground. Taking a seat, I then pulled out my notebook, which had things ranging from original spell ideas to breaking down the movements of swordsmanship, and even some scientific knowledge I thought important to write down. Anyway, as I learned more intermediate spells, my knowledge of magic had grown, as well as my belief that the rigidity of spells was not needed, and in fact, held magicians back. I mean, there were countless spells out there, likely enough to do anything one ever needed, but was there a need for me to learn them all when I could just produce the same effect on my own? I didn't think so. But still, I would go through every spell I could and master it, seeing if any insights would be useful for my growth. Intermediate rank spells, for the most part, were simply more controlled and powerful versions of beginner spells, with some merging two spells into one. For instance, Water Cannon, which launched a large concentration of water, was just a stronger water ball, and generally more fit for combat. It was in this rank that I also began seeing melded magic, which, as the name implies, was the merging of multiple magics into one. This also brought about another question of mine. When I cast a water ball and then heated it, was that water magic? Or was it also fire magic? Heat was firmly in the domain of fire magic, but when I cast the spell, I imagined the water molecules vibrating to create the desired effect. So, which was it? And did it matter? Mana was mana, so did it even need a defined element to work? Casting a fireball, I poured some more mana into the spell, causing the fire to grow hot enough that the snow on the ground began to melt. Fire magic. I then imagined oxygen gas, generating it before injecting it into the fireball. The air hissed as the fireball turned blue, and at this point, I could feel my face beginning to sweat. Now, was that still fire magic? Or was it now wind magic? Was it both? Releasing a sigh, I concentrated the flame into my finger before launching it at the ground, creating a small crater from the impact. Confusing, so confusing. But I suppose I didn't need all the answers, and the struggle to find them was quite fun. Maybe once I got a tutor, they could answer some questions of mine that I had, but for now, let's do some training. Slapping my face in an attempt to reset myself, I then summoned a ball of earth in my hand before transforming it into various shapes. After the discovery that adjusting a spell expends more mana, I had all but discarded my focus on depleting my magic power reserves, as by training my control and precision, I was able to deplete my magic power at an even greater rate than before. On that note, I had also tried to cast magic across my body, with varying results. If I had to explain it, it felt like there were veins, almost. Veins which allowed mana to flow throughout the body are mana veins, for simplicity's sake. Anyway, these veins only showed up around the hand, or rather, only led to the hands. But I found out that mana veins were also present in the feet, though, to a lesser extent. As seen with the stool trick, I was now able to cast earth magic through my feet, but only when I was in contact with the ground. Something like casting a fireball with a kick was possible, but as soon as it went away from my body, the spell dispersed, as if it had lost the connection with me. I guess I would have to keep practicing and see if that could be changed, but I had a feeling that it was just the way it was, which was fine by me. As long as I could cast earth spells through my feet, allowing me to use them seamlessly with my swordsmanship, that was enough. Perhaps I should start doing some practice in regard to that too. Just getting used to casting magic while moving, that is. It would be better to start early so that I can build up the habit, even if I don't integrate it with my swordsmanship right away. Swordsmanship, magic. Focusing on the ball of earth in my palm, I willed it to form the shape of a sword before compressing it into a hardened, stone-like material. This was the beginner rank earth spell, Stone Sword. Quite useless for most magicians, and unless you lost your sword, pretty useless for swordsmen too. But I wonder, could I take it further? Closing my eyes, I concentrated on the sword while imagining the lattice of the stone's edge vibrating. Not to generate heat, but rather to increase the sharpness, just like the intermediate rank wind spell Sonic Boom did to the air. My blade generated a soft hum and I opened my eyes before summoning a small pillar of ice. Releasing a horizontal slash with my new blade, to my surprise, the pillar was instantly bisected. Cool. It seems that infusing magic into my swordsmanship was going to be easier than I thought. But then, just as the thought enters my mind, I watched as the blade in my hand crumbled into dust. Okay, maybe not. I would probably have to focus on reinforcing the blade somehow, right? That should be possible once I reach the advanced rank in swordsmanship, I hope. I mean, that Boulder/Paul always likes to show off with never seemed to chip his sword, so there should be something to work with there. Information on the Six-Faced World. Rank titles in the Sword God style. Beginner. This rank is where practitioners begin learning the foundations of the Sword God style. To attain this rank, they must have a basic understanding and ability in swordsmanship. Intermediate. Intermediate Sword God practitioners can contend with an average knight, and can swiftly cover their body in tuki. Advanced. This rank is attained when one can consciously use their tuki. Saint. One is given the title of Sword Saint when they can completely control their tuki and can use the longsword of light. When a Sword God style attains this rank, they are given a dark leather jacket with a white fur trim collar by their master. King. There is no known condition for attaining the title of Sword King, as it is only a title bestowed by the Sword God. The practitioner who attains the title also gains a sword from the Sword God's collection, as well as a special title. Emperor. This rank is attained when two Sword Kings battle against each other in front of the Sword God as witness. The winner then becomes a Sword Emperor. God. The most powerful practitioner in the world of the Sword God style and the leader of said school. As such, there can only be one Sword God at a time. When someone bests the current Sword God in combat, they can then assume that title, and if the Sword God dies without being bested by a successor, the next strongest in the style assumes the title. The Sword God can give anyone any rank in the Sword God style that they wish, even if the person in question has not met the usual requirements. Rudeus Greyrat. It had been a little over 2 years since I had reincarnated, and while not much had changed for my family, I had gone through an intense period of growth. Most notably, I can walk now, baby. But that's not all. During this time, I also learned how to read by going through the 5 books in our house, which all happened to be in my older brother's room. I wasn't jealous though, as not only did it make sense for my seemingly genius of a brother to read a lot, but I was also given free rein to invite myself into his room whenever I wanted, so nothing of value was lost. But deciphering the language wasn't something I had to endeavor alone, thankfully enough. As soon as Leon noticed I had taken an interest in reading, he began to read me one of the 2 fantasy novels at bedtime each night, which greatly increased my understanding of the written language. Although, it was a bit embarrassing to say, "Thank you, big brother," to what was a 4-year-old child, but I swallowed down my pride with the overwhelming gratitude I felt. Anyway, after gaining an understanding of the language, I found myself drawn to a textbook of magic. I mean, who wouldn't? Obviously someone who came from a world without magic would find that interesting. But on the very first few pages, I found myself wondering how much credibility this thing had. There were only 2 ways of performing magic, according to the book, either by using a magic circle or by using an incantation. I, of course, had ample reason to doubt that. Not once had I ever seen my brother cast magic with either of those methods. He simply willed the elements to do his bidding, same with his healing magic, like when I had a sore throat that he cleared up. But, my mother always did call him a genius, so maybe that was just a thing for him. Maybe I'll ask him for some help if I can't find out how myself, but I should try working at least a bit on my own. I would hate to instantly shoot past my toddler brother in skill and destroy his confidence, after all. Plus, if my parents found out I knew magic, I might be forced to practice outside like Leon did, and I wasn't ready for that quite yet. So I'll keep my abilities, if I had any, a secret for now. Let's see, well, I should probably start with the weakest spell, right? Start from the basics, and then slowly build myself up. No shortcuts, only constant progress. I wouldn't let this second life of mine go to waste, and hopefully, I could remove my eternal wizard status on the way too. Seeing how my two parents and my brother were quite the lookers, I think I had a good chance to not be lacking in the charm department. It was just putting that charm to use that would need some work. But I had a lot of time to learn, right? Besides, being socially awkward was probably seen as cute as long as you had a handsome face to go behind it. Anyway, I was getting too deep into semantics. Okay, so, let's go with the most basic and safest of spells, the beginner rank water spell, Water Ball. Let's see, the chant was. Raising my hand, I then recited the words written in the book. Let the vast and blessed waters converge where thou wilt and issue forth a single pure stream thereof, Water Ball. Suddenly, I felt a sensation like blood pooling in my raised hand, and then, as if that blood was squeezed out through my palm, a ball of water manifested itself in front of me. I was startled at the strange sensation, and as a result, the ball of water fell to the floor. I guess concentration was needed to keep up the spell. That was difficult. Damn, Leon was a monster, wasn't he? Okay, now let's try it again. Concentrate, focus on the image of water. Feeling the same welling sensation in my hand as before, I increased my concentration. If I wanted to do this right, I should master the basics first. Just like how I used to practice combos in fighting games, I needed to imprint this sensation on my muscle memory. Or rather, magic memory, in this case, but same thing. Drawing a deep breath, I felt the blood-like phenomenon course through my body toward my hand, before expelling out of my hand, but this time slower and more controlled. Image, water ball, a ball of water, wetness, wet panties. Whoops, that last bit kinda just slipped in there, but it was a welcome thought. Wet, water, 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 water. Hia, I cried, shooting my hand out before me. And, in that instant, a ball of water came into being, before promptly falling onto the floor. Splish, I did it. Just like Leon, I could cast magic without an incantation. Didn't that mean I was a genius like him? Wait, no, I shouldn't call myself a genius just yet. Didn't I already know? Someone who puffed themselves up with pride would only end up getting cocky and failing at life. I didn't want to fail. Just like my brother, I wouldn't let this get to me. Instead, I would practice diligently while keeping a level head. There was no need to think of myself as better than anyone else. I should just buckle down and get better through constant practice. But, I wouldn't be lying if I said I didn't feel good right now. Well, let's try that again. Holding my right hand outward, I felt a weight pressing down on me. The weight of exhaustion. Damn, am I out of MP then? Such a paltry amount. I barely made 2 balls of water before being put out of commission. Wait, I think I've heard my brother talk about something like this, back when I was a baby. My magic power, or MP reserves, he said that they should grow if I start using magic early, right? Okay, then let's try this once again. Conjuring the image of water, and feeling the familiar welling sensation of mana, I quickly passed out. Leon Greyrat. I was now 5 years old. This meant that I had also had my first birthday. As with human traditions, there were 3 major birthdays one celebrated at the ages of 5, 10, and 15. The first birthday was to celebrate a child living and beating infant mortality, which was quite morbid, but it made sense in this medieval world filled with magic and monsters. The second, which was at age 10, was to signify when children usually started apprenticing with a craftsman, such as blacksmithing or tailoring, or starting to prepare for whatever job they were destined for. The third was to signify becoming an adult, and for most, this was the age where you began to search for a spouse and start a family. But I was still pretty far away from that. For my birthday, Paul had gotten me a set of 2 swords. One that was a short sword, which I could use with my current stature, and another which was adult-sized for when I grew up. He also made a long speech about morals and stuff, but the seriousness of it all quickly faded after he forgot his words halfway through. But still, it was a nice gesture, and it was a legitimately praiseworthy attempt at parenting. From Lilia, I had gotten a handmade red wool scarf, which I instantly began wearing as part of my everyday outfit, much to her happiness. Mama got me a book on protection or barrier magic, that covered up to the intermediate rank in spells. Unfortunately, I had the book taken away from me soon after receiving it, so I couldn't run off to my room to read it, but I was able to get it back into my possession after the dinner. And from my brother, well, I got a cute smile, and that was all that I needed. All amazing presents, especially considering our modest income. And honestly, my family was enough of a gift, at least to me. Of course, I didn't sit idly as this time went by. I was now proud to call myself an intermediate rank magician in every school, save for barrier magic which I had only scratched the surface of, and summoning magic, which I didn't even have a way to start. Alongside that, I was also now a pseudo-intermediate, ranked swordsman in all 3 styles, according to my father. What did being a pseudo-intermediate rank mean? Well, nothing, really. At least not to the rest of the world. It was simply something that Paul made up as a way to accurately describe my abilities with the sword, and for such a simple man, I think it was a pretty smart description. As he put it, I had the skill and technique to qualify as an intermediate rank swordsman, but due to my body, I was still a little too weak to truly be considered as one. This was an odd state of limbo no one else had likely found themselves in, as I was both quite talented at the sword while also having the advantage of training from such an early age, and thus my mental abilities in swordsmanship outgrew my physical ones. Anyway, back to magic. While I haven't embarked on any advanced rank spells just yet, it didn't mean I hadn't progressed in my abilities. While there was the fact I wanted to slowly master the basics before moving on to something more advanced, there was also something else I've learned from my constant sparring with Paul. Advanced magic was a bit much. A bit too much, I mean. So much so that it was essentially useless in combat. As I had learned before, the more you increase in the rank of a magic spell, the more complex it is and the more magic power that is required, and as a result, most advanced rank magic was for large areas of effect and weather-altering spells. And in combat, that was quite useless. Especially in a sword fight, where a simple and strong spell would be better than a gaudy one. Besides, I had already started to move away from the concept of spells, and more into the realm of using magic as it was, so I wasn't too hung up on not being an advanced rank magician. Of course, I ended up using magic in a way that replicated spells, but that was just due to kaboom! The heck? Darting my head toward the source of the explosion, my eyes widened as I watched a trail of water vapor, originating from our house, arc across the clear blue sky. And seeing the ball of water which was causing said trail, that was water cannon, right? Intermediate rank magic. Mama didn't know intermediate rank elemental magic, and I don't think she started studying again, so, was it Rudy? I knew that my baby brother had been practicing magic in my room, and seeing that he was only filling up buckets with water ball, I had decided to leave him to his lonesome. I didn't think he'd fire off an intermediate spell. And in the house, no less. The fuck? Did a monster attack or something? Paul shouted as he sprinted into the house. Letting out a small sigh, I released the control of my magic, causing the blue flame I was controlling to dissipate into the air as I then followed his lead. Running up toward my room, I was met with the scene of absolute carnage, with the entire section of wall blasted to soaked splinters as Rudeus stood there in mute shock. My room. The hell? Rudy, are you okay? Paul said with narrowed eyes, scanning the surroundings carefully. That look, it reminded me of our adventuring days. It's good to see our domestic life hadn't completely eroded his skills. Oh my goodness, Mama said from the doorway. Always the calmer one out of the two, she then looked at the destroyed wall before turning her eyes to the puddle on the floor, and then to the magic book that was splayed out next to Rudy. Her gaze shifted between the book and my brother a couple of times before she broke out into a wide smile. "Rudy Tilda," she said sweetly as she crouched down. "Ah, I knew that look." It was the type of smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, and for some reason, despite the warmth, sent a chill down my spine. She did this the first time I used intermediate rank magic, if I remember correctly. Well, I suppose it was Rudy's problem now. "Did you read the words in this book out loud?" she asked gently. But even that soft tone couldn't hide the tremble of excitement in the way she spoke. "I'm sorry," Rudy meekly replied with a tiny nod. "Sorry," Paul said, baffled. "That was an intermediate tier SP. Oh, honey, did you hear that?" Mama interrupted, jumping to her feet. "I knew it. Just like Leon, I knew our Rudy was a genius." Mama then began hopping around in ecstasy, her hands balled tightly into fists. It was nice seeing Mama so happy and act so cute, but where was I supposed to sleep now? "Wait, hold on a second, we haven't even taught him how to read yet." "How the heck? I've been teaching him," I interjected, cutting off Paul's words. "I hadn't taught him, really. I've just been reading to him at night." But for the past few months, Rudy hadn't wanted to do that anymore, instead preferring to head right to bed after dinner. That was likely due to feeling exhausted from practicing magic, as well as the fact he could now apparently read on his own. Maybe he was like me after all. Not that it mattered much. "Tilda, such a good brother you are, Leon." As a reward for my white lie, I was then engulfed in another one of Mama's suffocating hugs. Despite the fact I had gotten a bit taller over the years, I was still but an infant in front of those breasts. "We have to get him a magic tutor right away. I've wanted to get one for Leon for so long, so isn't this the perfect opportunity?" Mama exclaimed. Wriggling my way out of her grasp, I walked over to Lilia, who had begun to clean up the mess, before taking control of the water on the floor and collecting it into a cup. "Thank you, Leon," she said. "No problem, Lilia. Now, what are we going to do with this wall?" I asked with worry. "I do not know. But for now, you can sleep with me," she said. "Is that all right?" I nodded my head, of course. "Thanks, Lilia." As for how I could take control of said water, well, that was another application of magic I had found in my research. When one used elemental magic, said magic's matter would remain even without control, effectively turning from magic into, well, regular matter. Well, except for fire, but that was only because there was no fuel to continue to combustion. So, what did that mean? It meant that all matter had a connection with magic, which also meant that one could control the elements, even if they were not conjured with magic. This made sense, as with regular elemental magic, once you conjured the form of the spell, like a ball of water with water ball, it became regular water that you could then do what you wanted with it. Taking control of matter through magic, thinking about that, I wonder if I could use some sort of telekinesis eventually. "Honey, let's head to Roa tomorrow and post a job for a tutor. We need to make sure Rudy can hone his talents." Mama continued. With Mama continuing her ramblings, I looked down at the silent Rudy, who was sitting there with a blank face, eyes lost in concentration about something. "Come on, baby bro, at least apologize for messing up my room. You're lucky I don't have any mementos, save for big sis Ghislaine's ring around my neck, or I would be quite upset." "Hold on a moment. Didn't we promise that if he was a boy, I would train him as a swordsman?" Paul, opposite of Mama, seemed less enthusiastic about Rudy's talents. "You can't go back on a promise like that," he shook his head. "Don't talk to me about promises. You break them all the time. And I made that promise before our son launched an intermediate rank spell at the age of 3. Without any training, and right through our wall. Which you need to fix, by the way." Not wanting their spat to get any more heated, I decided to interject the argument. "Couldn't we just do what we do with me, and train him in both? He can study magic in the morning, and then swordsmanship in the afternoon with me." That seemed to put the quarrel to an end, as the two shared a look before turning back to me. "Oh, right. Sorry, I kind of forgot we could do that," Paul said, a little abashed. "Seriously. Anyway, with Rudy's training plan decided, it seemed like I would finally be getting a taste of magical education in this world pretty soon, other than what Mama did with healing magic, of course. I hope I can actually learn something useful rather than having everything from the textbook being repeated back to me. Maybe if I'm lucky, I can see what Saint Rank magic was all about too. Nah, who was I kidding? What Saint Rank magician would come out to the sticks to teach a couple of toddlers of a low-rank knight? That would be ridiculous. For now, though, I was just hoping the walls in Lilia's room were thicker than my own. I had a feeling that Mama would be a bit more excited than usual, and I did not want to hear that all night. Roxy Meagerdia. Watching the rural scenery pass me by, I took in a deep breath of the fresh air before releasing a sigh. Let's hope this one goes well. I had come to the Citadel of Roa after hearing about a new tutoring job request from the Adventurer Guild, but as soon as I arrived, I was turned down. Was it because I was a demon? Or perhaps it was my problematic hair color. It could even be due to my size. Either way, I quickly found my hopes dashed, but as if fate had cast its blessing on me, I found a new tutoring job posted the very next day. The pay was paltry for someone of my status, but considering it was from a low-rank knight in some unknown village, it was to be expected. But seeing the details of getting a free room and board, along with plenty of free time, I decided to take the chance. Besides, some quiet and stable country life would be good for me. I had decided to quit being an adventurer because of the instability of the lifestyle, after all. Getting directions to the knight's house from the coachman, I took my luggage before heading down the dirt path of the village, and before long, I found the place I was looking for. A beautifully crafted wooden house, overlooking the quaint and ordinary rural settlement. Yep, that's Asuran nobility for you. But at least it wasn't nearly as gaudy as the capital of ours. Those noble mansions were simply too stifling. Making my way up to the front door, I couldn't stop my gaze from drifting over to the beautiful walled yard and flowered garden. Yeah, a place like this, I could get used to it. But first, let's meet my new prospective students. Rapping my fist against the door, it didn't take long before it opened, revealing a beautiful blonde human woman, a handsome man, and a toddler held in the woman's arms. Alright, let's do this, Roxy. I gave the family a respectful nod. I'm Roxy. It's a pleasure to meet you. Perfect. Looking back at the silent couple, I noticed that the two were at a total loss for words. It was always the same with humans. Even though I was nearing my 40s, I still looked like a child to them. Oh, are you the home tutor? The woman asked. I was about to answer before the man scratched his head. Aren't you a little, You're little, the toddler finished for him. How rude. You're sure one to talk, I snapped. Shoot, I wanted to get hired by this place, but I just lashed out at a child who didn't look like he had even had his first birthday. Hey, don't be mean to your new teacher, Rudy, a childish voice spoke up from behind me. Turning my head, I saw a young child, likely around the age of 7, with shoulder-length golden hair and a red scarf wrapped around his neck. Cute. I suppose this was one of my students. Wait, what did he say again? That the toddler was also supposed to be my student. I guess there were parents like this, huh? A kid shows some flashes of growing up quickly, and then the parents think they have some special talent. What was that? The mother said. Oh, did I say that out loud? A little bit, Miss Roxy, the boy said from my side. But don't worry. I assure you we'll be worth your while. Here, let me take your suitcase. The boy then took my luggage out of my hand, and surprisingly, lifted it with ease. Were children supposed to be that strong? Those were all my belongings in there, you know. I know humans were known for their quick growth compared to other races, but that was a bit much. Thank you, Leon. Leon Greyrat, he said with a smile. I see, Leon, huh? Yeah, definitely cute. Oh yeah, what's this? Such a gentleman, this son of mine Tilda, the father, I presume, said teasingly. You always told me to be nice to pretty girls, Leon responded. Pretty. While it was a bit embarrassing to admit, hearing such a thing did force a blush onto my face, even though it was the innocent words of a child. After all, I had been called cute many times before, but that was all by perverts who enjoyed the fact I looked like a child. Perverts whom I would rather not associate with. At this point, I had a feeling that romance would be an impossibility for someone like me, especially with my childish dream of being saved in a dungeon by a handsome adventurer. Yeah, I was definitely a bit delusional regarding romance. I was a bit sad now. But even if it was just the words of a kid, hearing myself be called pretty, it felt quite nice. Wait, that's not it, Leon continued. You also told me that's how you would get them in your room, and then. Ah, stop there, Leon. It's fine to stop there, right? The father pleaded. Paul, the woman said icily. So his name was Paul. What is it, my beautiful wife? What exactly are you teaching my innocent Leon? Ignoring their family feud, I turned to look at the toddler who was held in the mother's arms. Would he really be able to be taught? Could he really understand the intricacies of magic? Instead of answering my unvoiced question, the toddler sent a wink my way before turning to Leon with a slight glare. I didn't know. Well, thank you for having me. I'll do what I can, I said, bowing. But I would carry out my lessons regardless. And I'll be sure to not make the same mistakes as my master. Leon Greyrat. Okay, so, how about we go through what you two know about magic? Or rather, what you can use, Roxy said, placing her magic textbook on the bench. It seemed that our new teacher was underestimating my brother and me, but for some reason, I only found that endearing rather than annoying. And from how my chest seemed to tighten whenever she cast her gaze my way, was this a crush? I suppose it made sense. While she only looked to be in her teens, still a bit too old for a kid like me, she was much closer in age compared to the women I had come to know. And, she was also cute. Really cute. I don't know if it was the exotic factor of her blue hair, or if it was her reserved yet confident demeanor, but overall, she was quite charming. But why was Rudy glaring at me? Was it possible that he felt the same? No, he was only 3 years old, so that couldn't be the case. But a demonstration, huh? I was quite excited to see what a magician could do in combat, as Mama always saved her mana for healing, and Talhand was more of a tank than a mage. Let's start with a basic magic, water ball. Commonly thought of as the most useful magic in the world, not for its attack power, but rather for its ability to summon fresh, potable water. Rudy and I both nodded at her words. Now I'll demonstrate. Let the vast and blessed waters converge where thou wilt and issue forth a single pure stream thereof. Oh, shoot, she was aiming for one of the trees. Mama will be pretty mad if it gets damaged. Water ball. Just as the ball of water floating on the tip of her staff shot forward, I stomped my foot, raising a pillar of earth that blocked the attack right before it hit the tree. But to my surprise, my earth pillar was demolished upon impact, creating a cloud of dust as I felt the control of the earth crumble. Whoa, her magic, while simple, was extremely powerful. Maybe traditional magic would be useful to learn after all. Sorry, Miss Roxy, I said. I don't think Mama would be very happy if you destroyed her favorite tree. I remember the face of pure rage she had when Paul cut down a few of its branches during a spar. My words seemed to break the girl out of her shock. I see no. What was that? Chantless magic. Do you do that normally? Yeah. And Rudy does too, I said as I summoned a ball of blue fire. Wow, and he does too, huh? She asked, turning to my brother. Wearing a confident smirk, Rudy summoned a ball of water, before shooting it into what remained of my earth pillar. Ah, I should level out the ground, shouldn't I? I see, I get it now. That makes sense, Roxy said, tipping down her hat to cover her face. She quickly regained her composure by convincing herself that it made sense, even though I was sure it didn't. After all, she was probably wondering if the two of us could even cast magic at all, much less without a chant and with such ease. She then cracked a smile, one different from the bashful one from before. I think it's worth training you two after all. She said things out loud pretty often, huh? I guess honesty was a trait of hers, for better or worse. Alright, let's move on to the next spell. As Roxy began excitedly flipping through her textbook, Mama made her way over with a tray of drinks. So, how are Rudy and Leon? She asked with a smirk. Roxy flinched before scratching her cheek in shame. Well, they are certainly something. I want to see their limits first before teaching them anything, so that's where we're at now. I see that's good just don't forget that they have sword practice in the afternoon. But for now, have some juice, Mama said, setting down the drinks. Ah, thank you. With Mama skipping her way back inside, visibly ecstatic about her two sons' praise, I took my cup before sitting down next to Roxy. Miss Roxy, your magic, it was amazing, I said. Despite how pretentious it sounded, my words were not a lie. And luckily, from the way the corner of her mouth curled, she didn't misunderstand. Perhaps it was because I had practiced quite a bit at using the elements freely. I knew just how skillful and precise her control was, allowing for the power of her spell to be amplified accordingly. While I don't usually use incantations, I did use them to study each spell I was practicing at the time, so I knew how rigid the system was. To go beyond that, and maintain the balancing aspect of incantations while increasing the power, Roxy was quite amazing, huh? Ahem, is that so? Well, thank you for the compliment, but you two are even more so, she said, her blue eyes dulling a bit at the end. But we still need help with learning, right, Leon? Rudy piped up, raising his head from where it was before. Wait, he wasn't looking up her skirt, was he? Actually, that might be par for the course for him, being Paul's son and all. I thought he kicked those perverted habits after learning magic, but blood doesn't lie, I suppose. Precisely. You can only learn so much by yourself. So please continue the lesson, Miss Roxy, I said, glancing up at her with a smile. That seemed to do the trick, as her face visibly brightened. If you say so. Now, let's see how you two deal with ice-type spells. And so, that was how I gained my first instructor in this life, save for Mama and my father, and possibly, my first crush as well. Information on the six-faced world. 7 Great Powers. The 7 Great Powers refers to the 7 strongest warriors in the world. This selection came to exist following the end of the Second Human-Demon War as a means for the technique god to find worthy opponents. The order of the powers refers to their strength relative to each other, with the first 4 being referred to as the upper ranks, and the remaining 3 referred to as the lower ranks. The rankings only change once someone is defeated or dead, thus, the ranks do not directly correlate to combat prowess. The 7 Great Powers and their respective ranks are as follows. 1 Technique God, unknown, missing. 2 Dragon God, Orsted, active. 3 Fighting God, unknown, missing. 4 Demon God, Laplace, sealed. 5 Death God, Randolph Marianne, active. 6 Sword God, Gal Farian, active. 7 North God, Alexander Ryback, active. Leon Greyrat. A few weeks had passed since Roxy became our tutor, and as a result of our new lessons, our schedule had changed to be like so. Mornings were spent doing magic lessons, and around lunchtime was free time, which coincidentally, I also used for magic practice. Afternoons were then used for sword practice, where Rudy would work on strengthening his body while I sparred with Paul. And then after dinner, Roxy would teach us things unrelated to magic, such as geography, history, and other life skills. Which just so happened to be right now. Thus, in dungeons, and any closed-off space, you shouldn't use fire magic as it causes the air to be poisoned. What Roxy was referring to was likely carbon monoxide poisoning, or perhaps the general loss of oxygen from the combustion reaction known as fire. I wonder though, do you think the air could be cleansed or recycled by casting wind magic? I asked. At my question, Roxy tilted her head to the side, tapping her finger against her chin. Perhaps, it depends on the spell being cast, though. Most wind magic is simply taking control of the surrounding air, so that wouldn't help, but for the ones that create air, such as water breathing, it would likely alleviate such problems. Good thinking, Leon, she then patted my head as a reward, which caused my face to heat up. Thank you, I said with a bashful smile. You're being quite cute, Leon. Averting my eyes in embarrassment, I then noticed that my baby brother was fast asleep on his bed. I suppose it is a little late, Roxy said. And since we touched up on multicasting, he must be quite tired. Are you ready for bed? I shake my head, no. I'm still okay. But, let's leave him alone. If you're tired, we can end the lesson. No, we can continue. Paul fixed up your room, right? Let's head there, she said while packing up her textbooks. Oh okay. For some reason, the prospect of having Roxy come to my room excites me in a way different from the excitement I felt when learning magic and practicing swordplay. Damn it, Paul's sinful words were getting to my head, weren't they? I'm definitely telling on him with Mama. Lilia too, for that matter. Actually, wait, that might be too embarrassing if I had to reveal why they were being brought up. With both of us sitting on my bed, I looked down at my twiddling thumbs before Roxy broke the silence. Hey, Leon, can you tell me how you use magic without incantations? She asked, averting her eyes in shame. Why would she be ashamed? Ah, so that's it. It must be pretty hard to ask the person you're teaching, especially a kid, to teach you about something regarding magic. But talking. Yes, talking was a good way to distract myself from these feelings. Chantless magic. Yeah, sure. So, I guess I'll explain how it started, I said. Roxy then pulled out a quill and notebook before nodding, please. That would be very useful. I then thought back to when I first used magic with Mama, and while it was years ago, the feeling was still quite fresh as I did something similar each time I learned a new magic. Where I would feel how it flowed with an incantation before repeating the process without one. So, it all started when I used my first spell, healing. When I repeated the words while concentrating, I noticed the mana flow through my body, I explained. Wait, the way you said that, it sounds like you could use magic. Instantly, Roxy interjected with confusion. With beginner rank magic, yeah. Just focus and repeat the incantation, and then, there. My explanation fell on deaf ears as Roxy looked at me perplexedly before rubbing her temples. That's not no, never mind. Continue, please. Okay, I said, confused. Anyway, I was able to feel the mana flowing through my body and into my hand, guided along by the incantation and then being pushed further by my will. She nodded her head at my explanation. I think I understand. While traditionally, the pushing mana part is seen as part of the incantation process, you, on the other hand, divide the two in your head. I see. She catches on awfully quickly. Yeah, anyway, next I tried to do the same without the guidance of incantation helping me, I continued. But with that, I was only able to make the mana appear correctly, if that makes sense. It didn't have an element, or any substance to it. To get the right effect, I had to picture it happening in my mind. The level of understanding one had toward the effect also played a part. Like how imagining the combustion process scientifically rather than a simple flame allowed my fire magic to turn blue, but that was a little too advanced for this first explanation. Image, control of the mana, these are similar concepts to how one reduces the incantation, though the concept of incantations, guiding, the mana has yet to be explored. Roxy then set down her quill before raising her hand with her palm facing upward. Her nose scrunched in concentration as she tried to put my advice into practice, but unfortunately, to no avail. Cute. I suppose it would be conceited of me to think it would be so simple, she said sadly. Don't worry, Miss Roxy. While it takes a lot more control than incantations, I am sure that if anyone can do it, it'd be you. I think the main thing is breaking the habit, I said. She turned to me with a questioning expression, breaking the habit. Why yeah, she still looked perplexed. How to explain it? Here, try writing your name with your left hand, I said, pointing toward her quill. She did as I asked, and the result was quite sad. It reminded me of my first few attempts at writing. See, isn't that pretty messy compared to your usual writing? I asked. Of course it is, Roxy exclaimed. But there's not really a difference between your two hands, right? Then why would your right hand be better? I asked. Because I started writing this way, Roxy responded with wide eyes. Her lips spread into a smile as she suddenly pulled me into a hug. I see now. Thank you, Leon. Her scent. Her warmth. I felt like I was going dizzy. Why you're welcome. I squeaked out. Seemingly noticing my predicament, she quickly let go of me, and I was met with the beautiful sight of her embarrassed face, as she quickly averted her eyes with a cough. Anyway, yes. Thank you. The silence in the air is palpable, and I suddenly found the sight of the flickering candle flame very interesting. I can keep trying to help you with chantless magic, you know. At nighttime like now, I eventually said. Are you sure? I'm supposed to be the teacher here, you know, Roxy said. I swallowed down the spit that had unknowingly gathered in my mouth. Then, how about we trade? You can teach me the demon god tongue, and I'll help you with chantless magic. Yes, demon god tongue, the language of the demon continent. It had all stemmed from one of her talks about the various races of the world where it was revealed that she was, in fact, not a human. I didn't care, of course, but it did explain her peculiar hair color. I would try to not remember how I immediately asked if different races could have children together. Luckily, they could. Anyway, as for why I wanted to learn her language. Well, it was always useful to learn another language, but I would be lying if I said that was the main reason. Instead, it was a much more embarrassing and simple reason. I wanted to get closer to her. Gah, just thinking about it sounds embarrassing. Sure, that sounds nice. Turning my head back, I felt my breath catch as I saw her bashful smile, with her face glowing orange as her finger twirled around a braid of hair. Noticing my gaze, she immediately averted her eyes as she started picking up her things. We can start tomorrow, then. Good night, Leon. Good night, Roxy. With the door closing behind her, I let myself fall onto my bed as I blankly looked at the ceiling. Wow, crushes really were quite something, huh? I think I could understand a bit why Mama acted so silly around Paul, back before they had Rudy. Startled at the noise, I turned to see Mama, Paul, and Lilia all looking teasingly at me through the crack of my door, their three faces piled up atop each other like a totem. You work fast, son of mine. I'm proud of you, Paul said, wiping a tear from his eye. An embarrassed Leon is so cute. Mama added. You are indeed quite charming, young master. Even Lilia. And she reverted to the young master stuff. Shut up. I'm going to bed. Casting a wind spell, I slammed the door shut before digging myself into the covers. But with the sound of my heartbeat thumping against my chest, I found it hard for sleep to find me. Leon Greyrat. Another year went by, and as the snow melted and the grass thawed, I found myself as an intermediate ranked swordsman in all 3 styles and an advanced ranked magician in all 4 schools of elemental magic. Quite a good resume for a 6-year-old. During this time, I also began practicing magic with Rudy, with both of us working on exercises focusing on precision and speed, such as crafting sculptures with earth magic, making clothes fly with wind magic, and making warm bath water with fire and water magic. Though, that last one was more of a chore that Mama and Paul asked of us. But it was still practice. An interesting thing I began to learn about my brother during this time, was that his mana, it was, different from mine. Somehow, he had more reserves than me, despite me being older and starting magic younger, but I suppose that could be due to the fact Mama was his biological mother and him getting a head start gene-wise. But that didn't explain why his mana was stronger. If he used a regular water ball through an incantation, it could demolish the stone wall in our backyard, while when I did it, it would only make a dent. According to Roxy, my water ball was the normal one, but that still didn't explain why Rudy's was so strong. And it wasn't anything to do with technique either, as I was probably ahead of him in that regard. His mana was just better, I guess. I wasn't jealous, though. I was more proud than anything about my little perverted brother's abilities. And besides, I had the edge in precision and speed of magic, likely due to my efforts of melding it with my swordsmanship, so I was content to lose in the strength department. My lessons with Roxy were also quite fruitful. Not only did she help me reach the advanced rank in magic, but I was also now fluent in the demon god tongue, at least when it came to talking. Still needed to work on my writing and reading, though. Anyway, I had my night lessons with her to thank for that. She also taught us about the world around us as well as various customs, like how nobility and trading worked, all stemming from her own experiences from when she came to the human lands for the first time, as well as the things she picked up while adventuring. During this, she also told us about casting melded magic, such as how when you used Waterfall, Heat Island, and Icicle Field together, you would form the spell Deep Mist, which caused a dense fog to fall on the surroundings. Her face when I simply had the water in the air condensed to create the same effect was especially cute. Yeah, my bond with Roxy had definitely grown over this time too. While teaching her chantless magic and her doing the same with the demon god tongue was nice, what really catapulted our relationship was us both learning barrier magic together from the book I got for my birthday. There was something different about learning something at the same pace, rather than one person teaching the other, even if it was an equal exchange in the end. But, as my romantic feelings for my tutor increased, so did my despondency. Despondency at the fact it would take a while, if ever, for me to be seen as a man, and not a boy. I was not so stupid as to think that the age gap between us couldn't be circumvented. After all, years had little meaning when demons often had such large lifespans. Instead, I was worried that she would find someone else before I even became an option. I mean, I had already spotted her, treating herself to the open door of my parents' bedroom, so she definitely had sexual needs that needed fulfilling. Needs that I couldn't fulfill. At least not for a while. But crying about it wouldn't change anything, so I would remain headstrong until I was finally old enough. As for what I was doing right now, well, I was taking a walk around town, of course. With my magic lessons finished, and Paul not returning home for another few hours, I decided to kill the time by walking around the village like usual. I had been trying to take Rudy out of the house with me too, but for some reason, my little brother was scared of going anywhere past our walled garden. Instead, opting to make his figurines, or just laze around inside. Sometimes, I would be blessed with the presence of Roxy with these walks, and we'd do a few menial tasks for the villagers, but lately, she had been doubling down on her own training in trying to use chantless magic. With such consistency, and her general intelligence with magic, I was sure she would eventually get there, but I was feeling a bit lonely with her holed up in her room. Get out of here, demon. Disgusting. Leave us alone. The heck? Demon. My crush was a demon, dummy. Hearing the scornful, childish voices, I quickly made my way over the hill before spotting the source of the noise. There were 3 kids about my age, all surrounding the crouching form of another smaller kid. Yeah, go back to the forest, and stay there. The 3 older ones, alongside the verbal attacks, were kicking the poor kid on the ground. HNGH. Stop. Please. The kid on the ground pleaded. But their cries went unanswered. This was bullying, right? Yeah, I didn't like it at all. Hey, you 3, I shouted. What the heck do you think you're doing? Leon Greyrat. The 3 bullies looked toward me in shock as I sprinted towards them. Huh, who are you? One of them asked. Coming closer to the victim, I slowed my pace to a walk as I formed a few balls of water above my palm, causing the 3 bullies to back away from the smaller kid. Does it matter? I asked you 3 a question. What do you think you're doing? I said with a frown. That's the knight's kid. He knows magic. One of them exclaimed. He knows magic, nice deduction skills, genius. Hey, we're just punishing a dirty demon. Don't you see? They even have green hair. Another one said. Right, green hair was supposedly a taboo here, stemming from the demon race of Superds in the last human-demon war. Not only did I not care about such stereotypes, but under certain lighting, Roxy's hair looked like a shade of green. And it was beautiful. Scram before you make me do something we both regret. Got it? I snarled, casting a floating fireball for emphasis. They seemed to get the message as they quickly scampered away, not before barking back some words which I easily ignored. Watching them walk away, I crouched down to the kid. Hey, are you okay? Well, it was obvious they weren't. I guess I could take this chance to brush up on my communication skills with those outside my family. Probably not, right? I continued. Here, let me heal you up. Reaching over to their hood, I was stopped by a frail hand. No. Keep the hood, they cried. Oh, green hair, right. They must have a complex about it. I'm not stupid like them. I don't care what color your hair is. I actually quite like the color green. It reminds me of spring and nature. My words, while a bit cheesy, seemed to calm down the kid. Are you sure? They asked meekly. Positive. Now come on, I need to see the damage. Relinquishing to my request, they then lowered their hood, revealing a set of pointed ears, a cute tear-stained face, and as expected, a set of green hair. And if my guess was right, they seemed to be a she. There we go. What's your name? I asked as I checked over her injuries. Her face was marred in dirt and grime, as well as a few scratches from what seemed to be a fall, and under her clothes were likely more than a few bruises, if they hadn't formed already. Sylphiette on. She shouted. Shish, calm down. It's just healing magic, I said, casting healing magic. Sylphiette, that's a pretty name. She squirmed as I continued healing her, likely due to the itchiness from getting healed, as well as the unfamiliarity of the sensation, but soon enough, she was as good as new. Thankfully, there was no need for skin-to-skin contact if the injury wasn't bad, so there was no need to strip her of her clothes. Can you close your eyes, mouth, and nose for me? I said. She nodded her head, and with her nose scrunched and mouth sealed, I then generate some warm water before cleaning off her face and hair, controlling the stream to wash away all the dirt. After I finished, I then began drying her off with some warm wind magic, and in no time at all, she was clean as a whistle, her green hair shining beautifully under the sun. There we go. I don't know what they were talking about. Your hair is very pretty, I said with a smile. Thank you, for everything, she responded meekly. Shoot, was the air too warm? Her cheeks were awfully red. But you're not bothered by it? She asked. What? Your hair? I said. That too, but me being a demon. Oh, that. Well, since I had traveled with an elf, a dwarf, a beast folk, and a monkey-like demon for a year, I was probably quite different from the other 3 kids who hadn't stepped foot outside this village. After all, isolation bred discrimination. Either way, race was the least of my worries when meeting someone. Well, unless it was a beast folk in mating season. In that case, I would probably run away for my safety. I don't care. In fact, my teacher is a demon, so that just makes it better, I said. That seems to catch her interest. Really? She asked. Really? I nodded. Anyway, what race do you belong to? Roxy had told me that she was of the meagred race, one of the many races categorized as a demon, but I wondered which one Sylphiette was. I don't know, she said. Really? Well, what are your parents' races? I asked. My father is half human and half elf, while my mother is human with some beast folk blood, she said, trailing off at the end. Sounds complicated. Neither of them have green hair though, hick. She began to sob. Aw, shoot. I forgot, since Rudy and I were both a bit weird, but kids were usually emotional like this, weren't they? Hey, there, it's okay, I consoled her while gently patting her head. Look, soon enough, those kids will grow up and realize how stupid they were, okay? It's just the color of your hair, right? It doesn't change who you are. Unfortunately, those words were a lie. Prejudice didn't just disappear like that, after all. But at least she would have me on her side, and Rudy too, even if I had to beat him into it. Anyway, how are your parents? Are they good to you at least? I asked. Why yeah, my dad's scary when he's mad, but he and mom are nice, she said through sniffles. That's good, then. Do you want me to walk you home? I asked. She shook her head. No, they're both at work. My dad is a hunter, and my mom works at the clinic, so no one's home. Wait, at the clinic? Ever since Mama healed from having Rudy, she had taken over all the clinic duties, leaving me with no need to help. Of course, with me learning magic and swordsmanship, there was no time to help out anyway, unless there was an emergency, that is. But in the short time I had helped out there, I remember the nice pregnant woman who stopped by a few times. What was her name again? Your mom's name, is it Anne by chance? I asked. Yeah, it is, she said. How'd you know? Small world. Or rather, a small village. I've met her before. Anyway, if you can't go home yet, do you want to play? I asked. I didn't exactly want to leave her to fend off the bullies by herself, and even if I was a little late for my swordsmanship practice, I'm sure Paul would understand. He's always preaching about morals and stuff, after all, even though I've caught him sneaking glances at Lilia more than a few times. Stupid womanizer. He's just lucky he can hold himself back, and that his gaze hasn't shifted to Roxy, or else I might have needed to learn advanced rank healing magic for the aftermath. Really? She asked. I pulled her to her feet. Yep, we can play tag, hide and seek, your pick. Her lips spread out into a smile as she then tapped her fingers together shyly. Then, can you show me more of that thing you did earlier? With the water and the wind and stuff. Oh, magic. How wonderful. Of course I can. Now I could get some practice in and keep a cute girl happy. You're a genius, Leon. But first, what's your name? She asked. Oh, right. I didn't tell her that, It's Leon. Leon Greyrat, I said. She met my smile with one of her own. And you can call me Sylphie. Leon Greyrat. Thank you again for taking care of my Fi. I was always worried about her being bullied. But who knew that such a polite kid would be Paul's son, Sylphie's father, Laws said. Indeed. It was nice to see you again, little Leon. You sure have grown up nice and handsome. Isn't that right, sweetie? Anne asked her daughter. Sylphie just meekly nodded her head in response. It was my pleasure. It's nice to meet another kid my age, who isn't mean, that is. But I really should be getting home now, I said in response. Yikes. At this point, I might miss my sword practice altogether. All right, be safe getting home. Anne said. Bye Leon. Thanks for showing me your magic. And for saving me too, Sylphie said. I gave her a light-hearted wave. It's fine. Let's do this again tomorrow, okay? We're friends now, after all. Why yeah, that girl, while still meek, really came out of her shell once I showed her a few magic spells. She was quite interested, to say the least. Well, if she wanted, I could also try teaching her, but that could wait for later. She was only Rudy's age, after all, and unlike him, she wasn't a crazy genius. With a skip in my step, I made my way back home, only to see a very pissed-off-looking Paul standing in front of the door upon my arrival, his hands on his hips and his face drawn into an angry and disappointed frown. I didn't think he took sword practice that seriously. Especially considering I was only a kid. I'm home, I said. Sorry I was late, I was just playing with a new friend. Do you know why I'm mad? Paul said, cutting me off. Is it because I missed sword practice and didn't tell you? I asked. His scowl deepened. No, it's because Ms. Ito's wife came by earlier, telling me you punched her son, Somel. I did what to who? I don't know what you're talking about. Don't spout bullshit with me, Leon. What did I tell you about being strong? He snapped. He'd told me a lot of things about getting strong. How to use it to get ladies, how to get girls, how to get women. Yeah, Paul was a simple man like that. But not completely without morals. So, if I'm understanding this right, he must want this answer. To not get strong just to flaunt it around. I said. Exactly. So why did you hit Somel? He asked, still irate. No, I don't know what. No excuses. He cut me off again. Damn it. It was always the same with this guy. He would do before he could think, and never took a moment to calm down and use his brain. Well, why aren't you talking? He asked. Because you don't seem to want to hear my side of the story. Enough. Feeling a stinging pain on my cheek and a ringing in my ear, I quickly regained my balance. He hit me. Why? What had I done wrong? It wasn't anything too surprising. After all, we had sparred numerous times, and against a skilled swordsman like him, I was bound to get struck more often than not. But this was different. Just apologize, Leon. Apologize for doing something wrong, and then I'll take you over to Somel, where you'll apologize to him. What? Who the hell was Somel? And why the hell was I supposed to be apologizing for? Why? I asked. Because no son of mine scratch that, no son of Zenith's, bullies the weak. As if being hit by another smack, I felt the world come to a stop as my chest clenched in sadness. No, perhaps it was confusion. I mean, why was he saying such a hurtful thing? Or maybe it was the feeling of betrayal. No, that wasn't it either. I just felt overwhelmingly lonely. Yeah, lonely sounded like the right word. He was right, after all, Mama wasn't my mama, and Paul wasn't my father. Even though I knew he didn't mean it, especially since he now looked quite shocked at what he just said, the reminder still hurt all the same. And so, with my emotions in turmoil, and my chest swirling in a lost sense of confusion at the feelings I felt, I did the only thing that felt natural. Run. Leon. I heard Mama shout from behind me. But with my vision blurry with tears, I ignored it in favor of running into the night toward the hill where I practice magic. Roxy Megardia. I don't think Leon is the type of kid to hit someone without a reason, I said to the people gathered at the table. Paul had come home fairly irate at his son, saying that he had gotten into a dispute with another village boy, but I was quite skeptical at the whole thing. After all, Leon was extremely mature for his age, and he was also a kind child. But then again, he hadn't had much interaction with kids his age, and I knew that if someone pissed him off the right way, he wouldn't idly sit by. I know, but since Leon has always been a perfect kid, Paul's quite worried about not being a good parent. Especially with Rudy growing up. I just hope it works out okay, Zenith said worriedly. I'm sure it will. After all, young Master Leon should be able to explain himself clearly, and as Miss Roxy said, I doubt he is at fault, Lilia added. Yes, you're right. I just. Smack. The sharp sound of a hand hitting skin resounded from past the doorway. Did he? Zenith voiced in shock. For some reason, I had predicted something like this happening. While a great swordsman, Paul left much to be desired in terms of emotional maturity. As Lilia and Zenith made their way toward the door, with me following closely behind, we heard what seemed to be the finale of their argument. Because no son of mine scratch that, no son of Zenith's, bullies the weak. Even my eyes widened at the words. After all, to an orphaned child, especially one with such a close bond to their mother, that was not something meant to be said. Especially by someone meant to care for them. Zenith and Lilia, quickly getting over their momentary shock, ran out to open the door just in time to see the sprinting Leon jump over the rock wall of the garden. Ah, Leon! Zenith's cry fell on deaf ears as she then turned to Paul, her expression the pure incarnation of anger. Smack! A second slap resounded through the air. What in the hell do you think you just did, Paul? You wanted me to leave it to you, huh? Well, look what good that did. She shouted. Lilia, on the other hand, just glared at the man, though somehow her gaze felt sharper than any sword even the greatest dwarves could craft. I messed up, Paul said. I didn't mean it like that. Damn right, you messed up. Zenith shouted. I told you that that wench was eyeing you the whole time and that the kid didn't even look you in the eyes when telling you what happened. But no way, Zenith. This is the perfect chance to instill some discipline into him. Into my sweet boy that is supposed to be ours. Zenith lectured him, poking his chest with each word. Didn't you always complain to me about your father? Aren't you just doing the same thing as him right now? At least Paul has the conscience to be ashamed, his head hanging meekly as he took in his wife's words. But that didn't really help with the situation at hand. I swear to Millis, if Leon feels worried when hugging me even once after this, there's no sex for a month. No, a year. Zenith then turned to me. Roxy, can you go check on him please? I don't know if I'm the best one to go get him. Of course, Zenith. Leaving the shaken Paul and the two irate women, I followed the path Leon took. Damn, I sometimes forgot because of his age, but Leon was already an intermediate rank swordsman, which meant that he was way faster than me. But luckily, it didn't seem that he had run far, as I only had to reach the top of the nearest hill before noticing the bald form of my student leaning against the tree. Hick, gaw, sniff. I couldn't help but frown a little at the sight. No, perhaps a little wasn't correct. I was frowning quite a bit. I felt pretty close to both of the boys I was teaching, but especially Leon. It didn't feel good, seeing him like this, all sad and alone. It reminded me of my old self. Luckily, that meant I knew how to make him feel better too, at least, I hoped so. Sliding down next to him, I hesitantly reached my arm over his shoulder, pulling him closer to me. Are you alright? I asked softly. He only nodded his head in response, lowering his face to his pulled-up knees. I sometimes forgot, no, I often forgot, that Leon was still a child. After all, when you're from a race that stops growing once you reach the age of a teenager, age is always a tough subject. And considering this child was teaching me how to perform what was seen as the pinnacle technique for magic enchantless casting, it was understandable why I viewed him as a bit older than he was. But seeing him like this, Leon, for all his genius and maturity, was still but a child. For some reason, the thought brought a small smile to my face. Why was it? I felt the same thing whenever he got embarrassed around me too. I guess, it was because he looked cute. I'm fine. Just, can you stay here for a little bit? With me? He asked with a nasal voice. Yes, this childish side of Leon was indeed very cute. Of course, I said, smiling down at the boy. Leon, I can understand what you're feeling, you know. It wasn't exactly the same, but it was close enough. Plus, Leon always liked to use analogies during his explanations. Combing my hand through his hair, I continued, I told you about my race, right? The meagered race? He asked. Exactly, I nodded. But I never told you about their special trait. He turned his head to look at me curiously. Special trait. I suppose you could call it a unique form of magic. But all the members of my village can communicate telepathically with each other, all except me, I said, looking off to the distance with a sad smile. Oh, that must have been lonely, Leon said, cuddling closer to me in a sign of affection. Ignoring the way my stomach tingled at the closeness, I continued, it was. And I left my homeland because of it. But I feel much better now. That's good. You're important to me. Goo. That, I knew he wasn't saying such things to flirt with me, but that only made my heart flutter even more. And you're important to me too, Leon. So, did you want to talk about what actually happened today? I asked. Nodding his head, he then goes on to explain about his walk on the town, the bullies he scared off, and the new friend he played with. Slowly, the sadness on his face morphed into an excited smile, one that could charm even the coldest of hearts, as he talked about his day. Just why couldn't he have been 9 years older? But I suppose this was nice too. Information on the six-faced world. Continents of the world. Central continent, the largest continent in the central and western parts of the world. The human race makes up the majority of the population. Millis continent. In the southern part of the world, it connects the central and demon continents. The northern part of the continent is where the Great Forest is located, the homeland of the beast race and elves. In the south is the Holy Millis Kingdom, the world's second-ranked country and home of the Millis Church. Begarit continent. In the southwest part of the world, it has numerous labyrinths and many strong monsters. As a result, the majority of the population are adventurers or ex-adventurers. Demon continent. In the eastern part of the world, it is a continent full of strong monsters and many different races of demons. As the fertility of the land is very low, the majority of the population is very poor. Heaven continent. In the northern part of the world, this continent is 3,000 meters above sea level, making it extremely difficult to visit. This is also where the heavenly race lives. Rudeus Greyrat. I didn't really understand what was going on. Paul was quite angry at my brother for some reason, and then they argued before Leon eventually ran off. Knowing the idiot that was my father, it was definitely his fault, but I was still confused about what made my extremely mature brother act so childish. But then again, he was truly a kid, unlike me, so I guess that was natural. As for how I knew he was a normal kid, well, I had said a few things in Japanese, and even the small bit of English that I knew, in an attempt to get a rise out of him to see if he was like me. But alas, he would only look at me confused, before trying to correct me with a similarly sounding word in the human tongue. But putting that aside, I was confused. What happened, mother? I asked Zenith. Both she and Lilia were quite mad, and Paul had been banished to sit alone at the table. Rubbing my hair, she answered my question. Your father said something very mean to your brother. I just hope Roxy can cheer him up. Something mean. But it didn't sound that bad to me, though. At least not compared to some of the stuff Paul had said during training. And the slap, well, he had gotten worse from Paul's sword, so I don't think it was that either. Maybe it was the stress. Or perhaps the accusation alone. But still, why did it make Leon so sad, though? I asked. Well, you see, your brother didn't exactly come from me like you did, Zenith explained. Though I love him all the same. So he was adopted. That explained a few things. There was the fact that he had brown eyes, when Paul had green and Zenith had blue. Also, there was the fact that they had settled down to have me, despite being adventurers, while Leon was still a baby. Oh, when did you take him in then? I asked. Zenith leaned back against a chair. Back when your father and I were adventurers, there was a bandit attack against a nearby village, and unfortunately, I couldn't save his mother. His birth mother, that is. Well, if Leon saw his mother die, then it would definitely explain why he was such a mama's boy. We adventured with him for a while, since I promised to take care of him, and then once we had you, we settled down. She was interrupted by the sound of the door opening, revealing the ever-beautiful lowly sensei Roxy, and my brother holding her hand beside her, eyes red from obvious crying. Getting so damn close to Roxy. HMPH. I'll let this go just this once, brother, but only because Paul did something stupid. Leon Greyrat. Hesitantly, I revealed myself from behind Roxy's robes. It definitely felt embarrassing that she saw me break down like that, but at the same time, I wouldn't want anyone else to calm me down. Leon, son, I'm sorry, Paul said, bowing his head. The expression he was wearing was so different from his usual confident smirk. It felt heavy with worry, so I knew he was truly remorseful about what he said. Crossing my arms, I tilted my chin up in the air. It's fine. I should expect that from an idiot like you. Haha, yeah, I really am an idiot. But, you know I didn't mean what I said, right? He asked. Yeah, I know. I'm then smothered in one of Mama's suffocating hugs, and feeling her warmth, I felt the last of my fears hidden in my mind washed away. My baby Leon, you know I love you so much, right? And I'm so proud to have you as my own, you understand that, right? She choked out. Yeah, I know, Mama, I said in return. Giving me one last squeeze, she then knelt, her eyes meeting mine as she gently stroked my hair. Can you tell me what happened today? She asked softly. I sent a cautionary glance toward Paul, to which he grimaced while scratching his beard and averting his eyes. Would he let me talk? Yeah, sorry about that too. Don't worry, Leon. Just tell them what happened. I'm sure your mother already has an idea, Roxy added from behind. Nodding my head, I then went over what had happened today, and how I stopped the 3 bullies, which was where the misunderstanding likely came from. After I finished talking, Paul spoke up. Shit, so it was something like that. I'm sorry, kid. It's fine. You already apologized, after all, I said in response. With how much pride the man had, an honest apology was more than enough. Plus, seeing Lilia, Roxy, and Mama all send him stern glares helped ease my anger. Mama's mouth then curled into a teasing smile. Sylphiette, huh, how interesting, is she cute? For some reason, she then looked over to Roxy as well. I guess. She's nice, and she really likes magic. I was actually hoping I could push my swordsmanship lessons until a little later so I could keep her company during the day, I said, looking over to Paul. I don't know. Paul. Master. Both Mama and Lilia interjected with icy tones. The man quickly raised his hands in defeat. Kidding. I was just kidding. Just don't be out too late, okay? It's dangerous to train in the dark. And so, with our bonds reforged, and our grievances put behind us, the family then sat down for dinner, putting an end to the eventful day. Leon Greyrat. So, monsters are different from demons? Sylphie asked, looking intently at a page in my notebook. Yeah, they're completely different. Monsters are just animals that get mutated, usually by magic, and sometimes they become a species that continues for a long time, I explained. Demons, though, are just what the races that fought against the humans in the last war are called. Though Roxy said that now, demons are just whatever races live on the demon continent, but anyway, yes, they're completely different from monsters. Roxy is a monster. As if. Sylphie, who was lying down on her stomach next to me, started kicking her legs up and down while her ears began to twitch. I see. She was evidently happy at the new information. It made sense. After all, she had been called a demon for quite a while, and even I hadn't refuted the fact, so she must have been scared that she was just some evolved form of a monster. And what does this word here? She asked, pointing at a string of text. I peeked over her shoulder to see. That's burbling. It means a gentle bubbling sound like this. I then summoned a ball of water before having it swirl around, creating the desired sound. I see, she exclaimed. It had been a few months since I had started playing with Sylphie, and our playtime had quickly turned into me teaching her about what I knew, such as writing, reading, history, and general knowledge. I didn't mind, though. Not only was Sylphie a nice girl who was eager and excited to learn, but refreshing my mind by teaching another person was a great way to retain the knowledge. She then closed the book before turning to face me with shining eyes. Leon, can we start with magic now? Yes, and she also really loved magic. Yeah, come on, let's do it then. I was a bit hesitant to teach her magic, as unlike Rudy and me, Sylphie was a normal kid. Not only were there dangers in giving a child such a powerful thing like magic, but there was also the worry that teaching her something like magic too early would lead to burnout, or something similar. But, seeing how adamant she was, who was I to refuse? Besides, it would be good to have her start using mana when she was young so that she could optimize the growth of her magic power reserves while she could. And also, if my theory was correct, chantless magic would be easier to learn as a child. Even after all the time we spent together, and even though Roxy understood it, my teacher still couldn't use chantless magic. Though I felt that she was getting closer. If I had to guess, something about being a child made one somehow more in tune with mana, as that would also explain the growth period of magic you could have during childhood. Okay, when you cast the magic, make sure you focus on what you feel inside your body. It should feel like a warmth starting here. I poked her belly, that goes all the way to here, I continued, tracing a path to her palm. My little display caused Sylphie to burst into a fit of giggles. Tea that tickles, Leon. He tilde. I guess Sylphie was ticklish, huh? Good to know. Now repeat after me, slowly, while focusing on the words and the image of water. Just like how you concentrate when writing down a new word, I said. Getting a resolute nod from the girl, I chanted the spell for waterball, watching as Sylphie excitedly observed the water come into being. Dispersing the ball of water into the air as a thin mist, I motioned for Sylphie to try. You remember the words, right? I asked. Yeah, okay, she said as she hesitantly extended her hand. Let the vast and blessed waters converge where thou wilt and issue forth a single pure stream thereof, waterball. And, nothing happened. A failure. Huh. I suppose Roxy did say that most people didn't get magic just by using a chant, especially a child like Sylphie, so that made sense. It was a good try. Though it may have been a little fast for someone who has yet to chant magic. Hearing Roxy's voice, Sylphie let out a surprised eep before running to hide behind my back. Good afternoon, Miss Roxy, I said with a smile. I see you're having fun, Leon. Taking on a new apprentice. She said teasingly, looking over at the opened notebook. I scratched my cheek in slight embarrassment. Yeah, Sylphie is pretty interested in magic, so. Is that so? So a student of mine has already taken on a student. At this point, there's no reason for me to be here anymore, is there? She said. Why, you know that's not true. I still have much to learn, and we're close to getting to intermediate rank protection magic, I stammered. I suppose that's true, she answered back. Seeing the wind sweep Roxy's hair to the side, I felt the tingling sensation return as I averted my eyes. Stupid feelings. So what are you doing out here? You usually visit the village or practice alone at this time, I asked. Her smile turned a little strained as she answered, well, I was studying in my room, making a few lesson plans for tonight, but then I noticed I was missing a pair of panties. You wouldn't know what happened, would you? I instantly covered my face with my hands. Rudy, what are you doing with our beloved teacher? Sorry, Miss Roxy. I'm pretty sure. Your brother stole them. Yeah, I figured. I just came out here to see how you were doing and to meet your friend. Although, perhaps that was a little forward of me, she said, smiling at the still hiding Sylphie. Come on out and said hello. This is Miss Roxy, the nice teacher of mine I talked to you about, I said, nudging the girl behind me. Oh okay. My name's Sylphiette, but Leon calls me Sylphie, she meekly said. Roxy's eyes widened a little as she saw her hair. I guess that even if she had known about her green hair beforehand, and even seen it from when she commented on her casting speed, it was still ingrained in her to be scared of the supered race and anything resembling it. But, as I expected, she quickly overcame her slight fear and shock. Nice to meet you, Sylphie. I'm Roxy Megardia, Leon and his brother's tutor. Although it sometimes doesn't feel that way, she sent a small smile my way. Sylphie nodded before asking, do you hate my hair? She was quite the perceptive kid, so she probably noticed Roxy's momentary fear from before. Roxy shook her head. No, it doesn't bother me at all. After all, under certain angles, my hair also takes on a greenish tint. She then ran her hand through her hair with a sad smile. So, while not to the same extent, I can sympathize with you. Sylphie then balled her fist, mustering her courage. I like your hair. I was a bit surprised that this meek friend of mine was able to speak up so well to a stranger, but I suppose she felt some connection with Roxy, as she was also a demon with troublesome hair. But wow, how cute. Roxy seemed to think the same as her lips stretched into a wide smile. Why, thank you. I agree. Miss Roxy's hair is super pretty. Especially when it turns green under the light, I added. Roxy's wide smile grew before she began patting me on my head. Thank you too, Leon. Say that to me again in a few years, okay? Sure. I responded with confusion. She stopped patting my head. And don't forget about your cute friend. Turning my head to the side, I saw that Sylphie was looking at me with a small pout. I see. I think your hair is pretty too, Sylphie, I said, patting her head just like Roxy had done to me. Thanks, she said before letting out a happy hum and leaning into my touch. What was with this cute creature? Well, I'll leave you two to yourselves. Just make sure you don't do anything dangerous, okay? Roxy said. I gave her a wave back, okay. Seeing her walk back down the hill, I couldn't help but wonder about the weird expression she was wearing. Even though Roxy had such a wide smile on her face, why did she seem a little sad? Or maybe I was just imagining things. Anyway, well, how about we try that again, Sylphie? This time a little slower with more focus, just like Miss Roxy said. Okay. Closing her eyes, she extended her hand once again and chanted, "Let the vast and blessed waters converge where thou wilt and issue forth a single pure stream thereof, waterball." This time, an orb of water appeared on the top of her palm, and as soon as she noticed, she began jumping in joy. I did it! I did it! I did oh! In her excitement, she seemed to have lost concentration, leading to the spell falling to the ground with a splash. Good job, Sylphie, I said with a small applause. Now, did you remember the feeling of the mana? Yeah, it was like, HNN. And then it went up to my hand with a, FWAA. Before squeezing out. It was amazing. I guess she was the instinctual type when it came to magic, like how Paul was with swords. Although that might get better as she gets older, hopefully. Okay, then try to do it again without chanting. Guiding the mana along the same path while imagining water, I explained. Alright. Wait. Technically, Sylphie was now a beginner-rank magician, right? While it wasn't anything special to me when I did it, being a certified magician was a pretty big deal. Especially for a commoner like her. I'd be sure to praise her after this. Information on the six-faced world. Magic tools and items. Magic tools. Magic tools are specially crafted equipment that have a carved magic circle. When a user channels their mana into the tool and recites an incantation, the magic circle activates, unleashing the desired magical effect. Magic tools can be used repeatedly as long as the user can supply an adequate amount of mana. Magic items. Magic items are objects infused with mana that possess unique and specific abilities. By performing a specific action or trigger, the user can activate the magical effect, or the item may have a constant effect that does not require activation. Magic items often have a limited number of uses per day and can replenish their mana reserves over time. Magic items are often found in dungeons and labyrinths. Rudeus Greyrat. So these atoms can combine, and when oxygen and two hydrogens are connected like this, it forms water. How exactly do you know this? Roxy asked me. I shrugged my shoulders in response. I don't really know how, I just know. I'm a Miko, remember? Right, but then, how do you know that it's true? She asked. I don't. At least, not really. There isn't a proper way to test it, at least not one that I know of. But whenever I visualize these scientific things, especially with fire and water, it makes the magic much more powerful. So I think it holds some merit, at least, I responded. She then placed her quill down. If you say so. Well, let's see how this goes. Extending her hand, I watched as her nose scrunched cutely in concentration, and after a few moments of nothing, a sphere of water suddenly appeared above her hand. I looked on in amazement as Roxy slowly twirled the ball of water around her palm before depositing it into a cup. I then watched as her lips curled into the most beautiful smile I had ever seen, second only to the face Mama made after Rudy was born. Roxy, she really was pretty. Who? She laughed happily. Right, she was also like this. But that was just another part of her charm, in my opinion. You did it, Miss Roxy. I exclaimed. I did, didn't I? She said proudly before pulling me into a hug. My face got warm at the contact as she then formed another ball of water, a giddy smile on her face the entire time. After playing around with the magic a bit, she then calmed down, relinquishing her hold on me, much to my despair. Ahem. Indeed. So it seems I have finally grasped casting without incantations, Roxy said, nodding proudly to herself. Thank you for your help, Leon. Was she seriously trying to act like a distinguished teacher now? After acting like an excited schoolgirl just a moment ago. She then looked out the window at the snow-blanketed landscape as she twirled a strand of hair with her finger. Though, Sylphie was able to pick up chantless magic right away, so I shouldn't get conceited. Don't say such self-deprecating things, Miss Roxy. You needed to break a habit, while Sylphie was a clean slate. Plus, I'm pretty sure children can learn chantless magic much more easily than adults, I reassured her. She simply shook her head before gently patting my hair. If you said so. You and your brother could probably transform the world's view of magic, you know. She said. That sounds troublesome, I said, leaning into her touch. I'm fine just spending time with family and friends while getting stronger. I see, but why do you want to get stronger? She asked. That was indeed a question. I guess, it feels good to improve. Plus, in this world, it's always good to have strength. Roxy nodded her head in approval. All good reasons. Oh, and because it's cool. When I get older, I'll definitely be able to be popular with the ladies, right? I said. Roxy pinched my cheek in response. How cheeky, you better not become like your father, got it? Yesh, Miss Roxy, I affirmed with some difficulty. She let go with a smirk. Good. And once you get a bit older. Her cheeks got a bit red before she hastily shook her head. No, never mind. Let's work on that intermediate rank protection spell before it gets too late. With intermediate rank protection magic, or barrier magic as I like to call it, I was having a bit of trouble understanding it, as there were only magic circles for activation and no incantations. But I was hoping that once I understood them with magic circles, I would be able to convert it to chantless magic, or at least something similar. I was able to use beginner rank barrier spells without a chant with no problem, and I could do the same with other spells up to the advanced rank, so it shouldn't be too big of a hurdle. Hopefully. But even at the beginner rank, there were quite a few useful barrier spells, such as Magic Shield, which, as the name implied, created a shield that blocked any magic attacks. Through Roxy, I also learned quite an interesting thing about barrier magic. That was, I really shouldn't be able to learn this. Or rather, we shouldn't be able to learn this. Protection magic had been banned for anyone to teach it beyond the beginner rank unless you were a member of the Militian Holy Knight Orders. Even for the beginner rank, the University of Ranoa, the greatest magic school in the world, didn't teach it, hence why Roxy hadn't learned it during her time there. Apparently, Mama had used a few of her old noble connections and favors to get that book, and as long as I didn't go around spreading my knowledge to everyone I knew, I should be safe. I really hope she wasn't wrong. But then again, it was unlikely for the Millis Church to send out their inquisitors just because a country boy and a random magic tutor, even if she was a demon, knew their secret arts. And even if they did, Paul, Rudy, and I made a pretty strong team. Plus, as long as I used it in unique ways without a chant, it would be difficult for anyone to find a connection with the church's secret magic. So Roxy and I were safe, hopefully. So that's how physical shield works. Hey, Leon. Are you even listening? Roxy said, snapping me out of my thoughts. Yeah. It stops physical attacks, right? I said. Roxy looked at me doubtfully. Were you actually listening? Or did you just get that from the name of the spell? I opted not to answer. She shook her head. I'll repeat from the beginning. This here, Leon Greyrat. I was now 7 years old, and while I had recently become an intermediate rank barrier magician, that wasn't what we were celebrating today. Instead, happy birthday, Rudy. It was my little brother's 5th birthday that was the occasion. From Paul, Rudy had gotten a sword as well as a long accompanying speech about morals and strength. At least the man didn't stumble over his words this time. Mama, meanwhile, had given him an encyclopedia of the flora in the region, with illustrations and descriptions to go along with it. Since my brother and I shared all of our books, except for the barrier magic one, Since he was more interested in elemental magic, I was also going to benefit from this, so I was quite happy about the new source of knowledge. And last was Roxy. Here, I crafted it yesterday. Handing Rudy a stick with a small red stone at the tip, she continued, since both you and your brother could already use magic, I had forgotten, but once a student learns elementary magic, the teacher is meant to give them a wand. Ah, and here's one for you too, Leon. She then handed me a similar wand, except the magic stone was blue at the tip. Whoa, I wonder how this would affect my magic. I'd have to test it out. Thank you, Master. I'll take good care of it. Rudy exclaimed, causing Roxy to grimace slightly. Right, she really didn't like being called Master, did she? Something about her old teacher in Ranoa, but even I didn't know the full story. Thank you, Miss Roxy, I said with a bow. You're quite welcome, you too, Roxy said with a smile. Ah, by the way, Rudy. My brother turned his head at Paul's words. Yes, father, he asked. You'll be starting actual swordsmanship training tomorrow, so don't do anything to piss your brother and me off. Ha ha ha, ouch. He got a pinch from Mama as a result. Trembling slightly with worry, Rudy then looked over to me as I gave him a consoling pat on the head. Don't worry, it'll mostly be posture and forms to start. And since our dad is quite bad at explaining things, I'll try to translate as best as I can. That seemed to relieve his worries a bit. Ah. And I got you something too. I then pulled out a bag of dried fruits coated in honey. A candy I made with the help of Sylphie and Lilia. Sylphie and I went into the forest to get the things, and Lilia helped make them. So you could say it's a present from all of us, I said with a smile. From said adventure, I was also able to put my chantless detoxification magic to use with the bee stings I got. So you better appreciate it, brother. Thank you, brother, Rudy exclaimed happily. Sharing a hug with him, I was barely able to contain my laughter as I see Roxy look at the candies longingly. Tilda. I knew she had a sweet tooth, but not to this extent. Good thing I kept some extras in my room. Noticing my gaze, her cheeks flushed as she averted her eyes. Ahem. There's something else that must be discussed as well. Huh, what was this? With both of us looking curiously at her, she continued. You two have become advanced rank magicians in every school of attack magic, are completely literate, and can perform high-level arithmetic. Which means there is only one thing I have left to teach you. What does that mean, Master Roxy? Rudy asked as he let go of me. Well, that means that it's about time for your graduation, she answered. Ah, right. I had expected this. It was only natural, after all, even if it was sad. But from the look on Rudy's face, that didn't seem to be the case for him. And that concludes chapters 6 to 10. If you'd like to continue following the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. You can also read the full story yourself through the link in the description.